Hello, everyone. I believe you are having wonderful time with people, learning great research, and making great connections with people, as I am from my side. It's about time where we listen to the oral research and program presentations, and I'm greatly looking forward to hearing the great research that people are doing in their universities and within their research group. This is a wonderful time I've been looking forward to. So we're going to have about four presentations right now, and then we're going to have sessions for questions and answers after each session, after each presentation. So I'm going to call on the team to help us, please bring up the first presentation. If you have any question, please drop them on the chat, and I'll take that after now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Morgan Boncyk. I am a doctoral student at the University of South Carolina. This study investigates the unmet basic needs and poor mental health that are associated with lower self-reported academic performance among graduate students. Previous work has found that basic needs insecurity and poor mental health are associated with poor academic performance. However, much of this work has focused on the undergraduate student population. Little is known about graduate students, as they are often not studied or lumped together with undergraduate and professional students, regardless of prior knowledge that experiences differ by academic level. This study aims to quantify the association between self-reported academic performance and basic need security and mental health among graduate students. Over 2,000 graduate students from a large public research university participated in the Fostering Food Security, Health, and Resilience in Graduate Education online survey during the fall of 2020, which assessed graduate students' school performance, food insecurity, housing insecurity, symptoms of anxiety, and symptoms of depression, using closed and open-ended questions. Characteristics of the survey participants were weighted to sample population enrollment demographics that ensured non-biased representation, so were not used for this analysis. We quantified the association between self-assessed academic performance with self-reported basic needs and mental health. Academic performance was measured with 13 items on general academic performance, coursework, research, and teaching performance. Basic needs included food and housing insecurity. A 2-item food insecurity screening tool measured one's worry over or experience of running out of food without the ability to purchase more. Housing insecurity was the stress, worry, or inability to cover the cost of housing. Mental health included symptoms of anxiety and depression. Symptoms of anxiety were measured with the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 2-item questionnaire. Symptoms of depression were measured with the Patient Health 2-item questionnaire. Logistic models adjusted for age, degree sought, and college. Food and housing insecurity models adjusted for mental health, and anxiety and depression models adjusted for basic needs. Qualitative open-ended questions were deductively analyzed. We found that many graduate students' basic needs were unmet and faced poor mental health. 1 in 3 students were food insecure, and nearly half were housing insecure. 44% of students reported symptoms of anxiety, and 1 in 3 symptoms of depression. We found that academic performance was associated with unmet basic needs and poor mental health. Half of students were satisfied with their academic performance, 68% reported on track to complete their degree, and 61% reported to achieve their professional development goals that semester. The graph shows bivariate in blue and multivariable in red models that students had lower satisfaction with their academic performance when experiencing food insecurity, housing insecurity, symptoms of anxiety, and symptoms of depression. Similar associations were found with being on track to complete their degree and achieving professional development goals. A PhD student indicated how the rent was skyrocketing, and so was concerned about their ability to make ends meet by the time they reached their final years of their program. Among the 86% of participants who were enrolled in courses, 70% believed that they would receive good grades, 80% that they understood basic course concepts, and 60% understood difficult course material. The graph shows that students with unmet basic needs and poor mental health reported lower understanding of basic course concepts. These associations were constant across all coursework measures. A master's student expressed that their studies had declined due to anxiety and depression. 2/3 of these students participated in research. Of those, 60% indicated they could propose good research questions, 70% that they could solve research problems, half that they believed they were an outstanding researcher, 70% could independently think during their research, and 40% believed they could achieve their research goals that semester. The graph shows a slightly different story than the previous graphs. Food and housing security were not associated with achieving research goals, but symptoms of anxiety and symptoms of depression lowered one's ability to achieve their research goals. Similar relationships were seen across all research performance measures. A PhD student indicated how their financial worries deterred their focus away from their research. Lastly, we looked at teaching performance. 30% of these students taught. Of those, 70% believe that they were a good teacher and achieved their teaching goals. Similar to research performance, students with poor mental health reported lower ability to achieve their teaching goals, but this relationship did not hold true for basic needs. A PhD student explained that they were constantly stressed about how they would make more money or pay their expenses that their assistantship salary did not cover. This deterred away from their success as an instructor. We found that graduate students who lacked basic needs or had poor mental health were more likely to report poor graduate school performance, including coursework, research, and teaching. These were all self-reported measures which are subject to recall and social desirability bias. This survey was conducted after the acute lockdown and when students were expected to be back in person. Many things can affect mental health and basic needs, but these basic needs are associated with academic performance. Future work should further investigate these relationships. Institutional support for students' basic needs and mental health may enable improved academic performance among graduate students. I wanted to thank our study participants and funders. Please reach out via email if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for that wonderful presentation. I think it was very relatable to me being a graduate student myself. So, well, that was very interesting and relatable. So we're going to take questions now. I can't see any question in the chat just yet, but I had two questions while I was watching your presentation, Morgan. So while we wait for other people, I'm going to ask you, as an international student, I'm kind of, interested in that research. So did you, find out the status of the participant in that research? Were they more of in-country, American students or international students? Were there anything different among them in terms of the outcome of the research? That's the first question I had. And the other one is, was there any information about what year they were in their study? Were they first-year graduate students? Were they towards the end of their study? Were they, in between, to see how that may differ among them? Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, so going with your first question about their status, we had about 30% of international students, which was representative of the university that was taking place at. And we did not look directly at a student's demographic status with their academic performance. I have some other work that was not presented here that looks at the different demographic characteristics with one's basic needs and their mental health status. And we did find that international students did have a lot poorer outcomes for food and housing insecurity, as well as symptoms of anxiety and depression, if they were an international student in comparison to a white or a Caucasian domestic peer. But for the year in the program, we actually do not have that data. We, again, on the demographic side of it, we do have data on if they're going for a PhD, a master's, or a professional student. And we did find that PhD students were significantly worse off in terms of these outcomes. But again, we didn't look directly at those demographics towards their performance, just the demographics towards basic needs and mental health.
Yeah, thank you so much for your wonderful work. That's very interesting. And I hope that, you get to do something further on that and maybe do some intervention to improve our quality of life as both PhD student and international student. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm trying to see if we have any other question in the chat right now. I can't see any. So I think I'll give 1 or 2 more seconds before we move to the next presentation, which is going to be by Kady, I guess. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Morgan, for that wonderful work you're doing, and we hope to hear from you again. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
So I'm going to let us go now to the next presenter. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kady Harris, and I am a master's student in the Nutrition and Exercise Science program at South Dakota State University. Today, I will be discussing bikeability and walkability, a review of current audit tools. Dr. Kendra Kettleman is the co-author for this presentation. Obesity is becoming more prevalent in the United States, especially among the adult population. According to the results from the 2017 to 2018 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, an estimated 42.5% of U.S. adults aged 20 and over have obesity, including 9% with severe obesity, and another 31.1% are classified as overweight. This table depicts age-adjusted trends in overweight, obesity, and severe obesity prevalence from 1960 to 1962 through 2017 to 2018. The health implications that accompany obesity are far-reaching and include early mortality, increased risk of diabetes and hypertension, as well as an increased risk of heart disease and cancer. The factors that contribute to obesity include lifestyle, environmental, and biological components. In addition to this, neighborhood design and access to safe places conducive to physical activity also impact the weight status of adults. Weight loss in obese individuals has been associated with improvements in cardiometabolic factors, including a decrease in the prevalence of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and inflammation. High levels of physical activity and cardiorespiratory fitness have been shown to decrease the risk of these health conditions. Thus, an environment conducive to physical activity is vital for the overall health of communities. Communities and environments that encourage physical activity are said to be bikeable and/or walkable. For the purpose of this review, bikeability will be defined as the extent to which an environment is convenient and safe for cycling, and walkability will be defined as the extent to which an environment is safe and convenient for walking. There are many factors that encompass the bikeability and walkability of an environment, including objective and subjective measurements such as surrounding infrastructure, the safety of the path, and the overall comfort of the user. The bikeability and walkability of communities are assessed by audit tools that evaluate several different aspects of the built environment. The purpose of this presentation is to summarize current tools that are being used to evaluate the bikeability and/or walkability of a community and/or college campus. The search engines used in this literature review include Google Scholar and PubMed. The study began with a series of search terms related to bikeability and walkability audits, including bikeability, walkability, assessment of community bikeability and walkability and bikeability audit tools. The inclusion criteria for this study included any articles published in English within the last 20 years that related to the topic and included the audit assessment evaluation criteria. Out of the 9 studies included in this review, 4 of the studies pertained to both bikeability and walkability. To evaluate the tools, the assessment methods used within each tool was grouped into 5 broad categories: functional, safety, aesthetics, destination, and subjective assessments. The categories were then further broken down into more specific subsections pertaining to each topic. The results of this evaluation are shown in Table 1. The names of the tools included in this table are as follows: the Systematic Pedestrian and Cycling Environmental Scan, or SPACES, the Pedestrian Environmental Data Scan, or PEDS, the Path Environment Audit Tool, or PEAT, and Sneakers and Spokes. Most of the audit tools offered similar evaluation methods, but there were a few discrepancies in specific measured components. For example, PEAT and Sneakers and Spokes were the only tools to account for wheelchair accessibility of a path. Additionally, PEDS was the only tool that did not include an assessment for path size or bike parking. However, it was the only tool to assess for perception of safety. All 4 of the audits included assessments of the safety features, including lighting, path/lane obstructions, and the presence of traffic crossing aids. Out of the 9 tools included, 5 tools related solely to walkability. The evaluation of walkability tools was similar to the ones used for both bikeability and walkability audits. The 3 main categories for assessment included walkability, safety, and aesthetics. These were then broken up into subsections relating to the main topics. The results of this evaluation are shown in Table 2. The names of the tools included in this assessment are as follows: the Rural Active Living Assessment Tools, or RALA, the Neighborhood Environment Walkability Scale, or NEWS, the Prevention Research Center's Healthy Aging Research Network Environmental Audit Tool and Protocol, or the PRC-HAN, the Senior Walking Environmental Assessment Tool, or SWET, and the CDC Walkability Audit Tool. Most of the audit tools offered similar evaluation methods, but again, there were a few discrepancies in some of the specific measured components. For example, the CDC Walkability Audit Tool did not include several of the assessment measures that the other tools included, such as sidewalk connectivity, lighting, path obstruction, traffic crossing aids, pollution, and traffic volume. This tool might be useful for a quick, easy assessment, while the other tools could be more useful for detailed assessments. Additionally, SWET was the only tool to account for all of the assessment components, while PRC-HAN accounted for all but pollution. Table 3 provides a breakdown of the audits based on validation, instructions for use, and whether the tool has been field tested and in what environment. Only 4 of the 9 included tools have been validated for use by a government organization. Validation is beneficial when determining if the outcome from the tool is measuring what was intended. The instructions for use, if included, provide ease of use and convenience for the user. 6 of the 9 total tools included instructions on how to properly perform the tool in the specified setting. One of the tools, PEAT, offered separate training, while the remaining 2 did not include instructions for use or trainings. And lastly, 7 of the tools have been field tested. Most of the tools were assessed in an urban environment, such as cities and college campuses. However, RALA and PEAT were both tested in rural environments, such as small towns. The field-tested environments show promising results for cities looking to perform and implement these audits into their own communities. The findings from this literature review can aid in identifying the functionality of each audit tool relevant to the desired measurements. Before selecting a tool, it is important to consider the intended outcomes and the applicability of the results in a specified setting. Additionally, the audit tools are a valuable source of information for communities looking to enhance the bikeability and/or walkability of their neighborhoods. The results of this literature review recognize the current applicable tools used to assess bikeability and walkability and signify the importance of environments conducive to physical activity. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope this was informative for you.
Thank you, Kady. Of course, that was very informative for me. Thank you for that wonderful work you're doing. And I'm trying to see if we have anybody who has dropped a question at this moment, but I can't see any question. So, but again, I'm going to ask a question. Thank you for reviewing all those tools. So what was coming through my mind when I was watching the presentation and looking at all those tools is that, do you think there is anything that needs to be updated, or do you think we need a better tool to assess the bikeability and walkability of our environment? That's the first thing. And then the other thing is, so the tools assess the bikeability and walkability. Does the assessment they do actually translate to making a difference in the way people live? I mean, it's one thing for it to really assess how people use how easy it is to use the environment. It's another thing for people to actually use the environment. So what do you think from your research in reviewing those tools about how people actually use the environment? Do you get my two questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your questions. For the first one, I think there's a lot of components, a lot of different components in all the tools that are valuable, but they also kind of overlap. So I think most of them are asking the same kind of like how specific, I guess, you want to get for each tool. And then kind of like I talked about the walkability, the CDC walkability, it's very, I guess, not vague, but it just doesn't go into as much detail as the other one. So that would be used for probably like a quicker assessment of the environment. Whereas like something like the RALA was very specific and detailed. So yeah, I think that it's kind of nice because you can decide, I guess, which tool is useful for like which environment kind of. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, it makes sense. Thank you so much. So it means that some tool may be more applicable to some environments than others, right?
Right, absolutely.
So
go on. And then to answer your second question, I do think these audit tools are valuable for communities, and I guess it kind of just depends how much a community prioritizes their bikeability and walkability. So you can perform this audit, but then if you don't have the desire to just apply the results to the environment, then I mean, what was the purpose of doing the audit in the first place? So I do think that these are very beneficial for communities who are actually looking to enhance the bikeability and walkability of their environments. And yeah, hopefully it's useful for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for that clear answer. The last question that came to my mind while you were answering the first question is, so if these tools may be specific to, some environments, I mean, some of them specific to the type of environment and not the other, do these tools have that, should I say, caveat or note to state that this tool is best suited for this kind of environment or this kind of community or something like that? So people don't, put round pegs in square holes. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, from what I found, a lot of them don't really have a disclaimer for a specific environment, which is why I kind of wanted to dive into what environment they were used in terms of like urban versus rural. Because if you're going to assess an urban environment, it's probably going to look a lot different than a rural environment in terms of prioritizing bikeability and walkability and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kady, for that wonderful presentation and for the wonderful work you're doing. And also, we look forward to hearing from you again and seeing your work everywhere. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So now I think we're going to go to the next presenter, who is Alison Kuch. So I'm going to call on our team to show us the next presentation. Thank you.
My name is Alison Kuch, and I will be presenting on behalf of the authors listed on this slide for our project using community member and expert input to increase applicability of sneakers and spokes, a walkability and bikeability audit from campus to community. We will be going over the background, objective, and methods, results, and then conclusion. Campuses that are supportive of walking and biking provide numerous benefits to the community. The extension of walkability and bikeability into the community exacerbates these benefits. The original Sneakers and Spokes Walkability and Bikeability Audit, adapted from the Center for Disease Control's Healthier Worksite Initiative Walkability Audit, was created to measure the unique features of university campuses that other audits just didn't capture. Collaboration of experts led to the development of this easy-to-use tool, the first to their knowledge to audit features specifically for the walkability and bikeability of college campuses, supported by a high inter-rater reliability. As part of a larger toolkit, the next step for the group is to adapt the audits, ranging from a convenience store audit to a policy audit to, of course, a walkability and bikeability audit from the campus into the community. The objective of this project was to use the Delphi method, the method of using expert opinion to forecast needs, and talk loud in-depth interviews with community members to adapt the Sneakers and Spokes Walkability and Bikeability Audit for campuses into the Sneakers and Spokes 2 Walkability and Bikeability Audit for communities. Based on community member and expert input, several important changes were made to the 13-item Sneakers and Spokes Walkability and Bikeability Audit to increase applicability to the community setting. Overall changes include making questions more clear and updating scale options to be more cohesive between choices, including adding options where necessary. We will explore each of the 5 major changes in depth in the subsequent slides. The first major change to the audit is that auditors now have the option to choose whether they are assessing walkability, bikeability, or both. Previously, the auditor completed a combined walkability and bikeability audit no matter what the goal of the institution or community was. Now communities have the option to choose and receive a score accordingly, which makes improvements easier to make and progress in any area easier to track over time. The second major change to the audit was a question was added discussing shade, which offers sun protection during the summer but may hinder snow and ice melting during the winter. Sun protection during the summer can prevent heat exhaustion and sunburns. Ice and snow on walking surfaces in the winter can lead to an increased risk of slips and falls. In the in-depth interview, the participant also noted that trees offer protection from the wind, like a shelter belt, but due to the variability in climate and wind speed between U.S. locations, this insightful aspect was included from the final edits to the audit. The third change to the audit is that 2 question structures were completely changed to increase clarity and usability. This includes question I, functionality, aesthetics, and attractiveness, and question L, bike racks. We will explore this more on the next 2 slides. Originally, question I was updated using expert opinion to expand the options and make them flow from one to the next in the most sensical way possible, using low, moderate, and high as descriptors and separating aesthetics into multiple descriptors, including functionality, aesthetics, and attractiveness, to better communicate what the auditor is looking for when answering this question. However, based on the in-depth interview, this question was split into 3 parts, as it was discussed that functionality, aesthetics, and attractiveness were just too different to measure and observe in a single question. Similarly, the question on bike racks was split from a single question about the adequacy of the bike rack availability into 5 separate parts addressing certain aspects of what a bike rack and their location might offer, including a change of language to encompass not just availability but the location, the ease of use, the availability, and the secure and safeness of a location, and any bonus features such as rain protection or lockers. The fourth change we made to the audit were that 5 audit questions were updated to include intermediate Likert scale options to increase clarity for the auditor. These questions include question A, pedestrian facilities, question E, maintenance, question F, path size, question H, universal accessibility, and question K, terrain. An example of this change is question A, pedestrian facilities. We can see in the top left corner the original question from the first version of the Sneakers and Spokes audit. It includes options 1, 3, and 5, but leaves option 2 and 4 blank, leaving the auditor to pick the best option based on the knowledge provided in options 1, 3, and 5. However, we went through and added 2 options 2 and 4 to reduce confusion and increase clarity for the auditor when choosing the most appropriate option to answer this question. The fifth and final change that we made to this audit was that 6 questions were updated to increase overall clarity and applicability to the community. 2 of these questions, question F, path size, and question H, universal accessibility, focus specifically on better communicating aspects of universal accessibility and will be shown in the next slides. I'll summarize the rest of the changes next. Question B, pedestrian conflicts, language updated to better reflect the individual nature of various intersections, updated to include visibility and overall conflict potential, not just speed and traffic volume, and included not a numeric speed limit, but instead reference to the posted speed limit. Question D, nighttime safety features, was updated to include the effects of shadowing. Shadowing occurs when an area is too intensely lit in a narrow scope. This allows shadows outside of the lighted area, decreasing a pedestrian's ability to see. Appropriate lighting may not always mean bright light. Question G, buffer, was updated to include not just buffer size, but different types of buffers as well. Question K was updated to not just include the hilliness and effort that a person may need to exert to tackle the terrain, but elevation, surface material, and the physical effort to walk and bike, as well as adding to those Likert style options. The first of the 2 questions updated to specifically discuss universal accessibility needs in language is question F, which talks about path size. We, in our options, reference what is enough room for 1 person to pass, 2 able-bodied people to pass, or someone in a wheelchair, or 2 people in a wheelchair, and have included this image for reference. It was noted in our interview that it was exceptionally helpful to see that image next to the question answers to kind of visualize what that sidewalk width may look like. Lastly, the second question updated to discuss universal accessibility is all about universal accessibility and what we can look for on a path segment. Before, the question just talked about being mobility impaired, like needing to use a wheelchair or needing handrails, accompanying steps, curb cuts, etc. And we updated this question to include not just the mobility impaired, but the vision and audible impaired as well, with pictures and descriptions about what one may look for, including curb cuts, truncated domes, tactile paving, handrails, etc. The limitations for this project include a lack of response from community member interviews. We ended up only doing 1 in-depth talk aloud interview. However, the community member talked with us for a very long time and is an avid cyclist in their community, along with working at the Parks and Recreation Department and being on the sustainability committee within their community. Another limitation is that Likert options may not encompass the full picture of what a path segment looks like. However, Likert options do increase inter-rater reliability, as there's only 5 options for someone to choose from, and that is something that was a standout from Sneakers and Spokes 1, and we hope that this carries through Sneakers and Spokes 2. The conclusion of this project is that the Delphi method and an interview with an involved community member led to several important changes to the Sneakers and Spokes walkability audit to be more applicable and useful to community setting for both research-based initiatives and community benchmarking. This is a reference for the first Sneakers and Spokes walkability and bikeability audit. Please look at if you are interested, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alison, for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
For the great work you're doing. I'm going to peep into the chat now to see if anybody has a question already typed there or if there is a hand up. I can't see any at this moment, so I'm just going to ask a question. So you might have probably said this, maybe I missed it. So I was going to ask what motivated the changes you made to the tool, because I saw that you changed this question to that, you added this, or you proposed this to be added and all of that. What motivated that to change? And the other thing is, I see that the change maybe is for applicability to community or something. So did you involve people in the community to review this audit, or who were the people really involved in proposing those changes? How did you come to conclude that should be the best way those questions or those items on the tool should be presented? I hope my question is clear.
Yes, thank you. So our goal with the survey was it's already been validated for campus use as part of that Sneakers and Spokes 1. So our goal is to transition these tools as part of a larger toolkit to be more applicable to a community. So that's why we started with these, and we started using the Delphi method and expert opinion from those who worked on the original walkability Sneakers and Spokes 1 audit, and that was our starting point. And once we had all reached a consensus about how the survey looked at that point, we did reach out to community members to offer those in-depth think aloud interviews, and we did only get that one participant, but part of the option was to meet with us and actually go out into the community and audit a few segments and see how the survey made sense to them and through their viewpoints. So eventually we'd like to get some more community member involvement, and then based on how we change the survey in the future, maybe it will need to be validated again, but maybe not, since it's just some edits from the first one. But we would love to see some more community involvement to make sure that we're hitting the boxes that need to be hit and we're not kind of tunnel visioning through what we think is appropriate.
All right. Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. Someone just popped a question into my chat right now. The person said they were going to ask about the motivation. That's the question from Marisa for changing the audit. So the follow-up question she now wants to ask is, has this new tool been tried out I mean, with the changes, to see how the implementation would go? You get a question?
Is that the whole question?
Yes, that's the question. Yes.
Okay. As we're used to working with students and campuses, I imagine the first step would to get a group of student researchers who are interested in this out and move it more into the community and outside of the campus. And that would kind of be the first step. We do have these tools available, and these will be available after the conference. You can reach out to myself or Dr. Kendra Cattleman. And so if you would like to try the tool out in your community as someone who is in this conference and give us feedback, we would be more than happy to receive that sort of feedback. We don't have that phase 100% planned out right now, but that is the next step for sure.
Thank you so much, Alison. I mean, there's always a next step to research, and that's why we're here.
Right.
To feedback and do something more. Thank you so much for presenting that wonderful research and for trying to make our campuses and community, more healthy. So we hope to see you again doing your great work in other places. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we're not going to go to the last oral presentation for today. I believe everybody's having a wonderful time, seeing the great work that our team is doing on different campuses and in their own micro team over there. So we're not going to listen to Amelia Sullivan on her own oral presentation. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Today I will discuss the novel relationship between financial literacy attitude and food security status in college students. My name is Amelia Sullivan, and I'm a master's thesis student and a senior dietetic intern at the University of Maine. College students in the United States are ironically known for living off minimal funds, eating ramen noodles for dinner, and having high consumption of alcohol. Yet this stereotypical image of a college student casts a shadow over a darker reality many college students face. Sadly, many college students face high rates of food insecurity, financial stress, and poor diet quality. Although college students face several different health disparities, among those health disparities extensively documented are food insecurity and poor diet quality. It's easy for researchers such as myself to conclude that food insecurity is due to the college environment, making it challenging for college students to work or save money. However, as we know, food insecurity is multifaceted, impacted by factors such as environment and income, but as well race or ethnicity, disability status, employment, and several other factors. A systematic review by Boncyk and colleagues assessing food insecurity rates of college students found that 35 to 42% of students were food insecure. Food insecurity on college campuses is associated with poor dietary behaviors, such as consuming more processed food and fewer fruits, vegetables, and legumes. Important to note is that food insecurity in college students is also associated with poor mental health and reduced academic performance. I wanted to share some powerful quotes from a qualitative study by Lisa Henry assessing food security status on a college campus. One student stated, "I'm trying to get more hours at work so I can afford food, but then I don't have any time to study." Another states, "It's mind over matter. Your body adapts to hunger." This student states, in regards to not utilizing the campus food pantry, "It's the shame of it. I worry that someone else needs it more than me. If we don't have food, we just don't eat." Likewise, this student states, "I struggle silently. Everybody wants to keep their dignity." This student describes the faces of hunger. "We're normal college students. No one talks about it. I don't go up to my buddy and say, 'Oh man, I haven't eaten today.'" Lastly, this student states, "My priority is keeping a roof over my head. There's no point in worrying about food if there's no fridge to put it in." These distorted views on food insecurity increase student shame, stigma, and confusion. Yet, the last quote provided does exhibit a degree of financial literacy. College can be a significant financial burden for students. Popovich and colleagues' systematic review of financial literacy found that almost 3/4 of college students report financial stress. Financial stress is associated with increased depression, anxiety, poor academic performance, and degree persistence. Students with both low financial support and financial literacy are also susceptible to poor health outcomes and food insecurity. 4 years of living off minimal funds can be both physically and mentally exhausting for college students, and it can take several years to recover from the debt acquired in college. In fact, millennials born between 1981 and 1996 average $87,000 in debt, indicating a great need to increase the financial literacy of college students before entering the next generation of workforce. A qualitative study by Nuong and Harian assessing the relationship between low-income students and their sense of belonging shed light on the financial literacy of college students. One student stated, "There's pressure to go out and go to restaurants and spend money on food, just so you can feel like you're actually getting a college experience." Likewise, this student states, "It's a big part of undergrad culture here. Like spend money going out to the movies, going out to eat. We usually go out every weekend." This student states, "I have more credit card debt than I should because of wanting to fit in." Another states, "You could get the supplemental supplies, i.e. chemistry building block sets, and you're allowed to use those on the exams. Students like me who don't have the funding, the financial ability to get these sets actually are at a disadvantage." Lastly, this student states, "As a consequence of having limited means, I found that I don't have a deep, meaningful connection with anybody." These quantitative and qualitative statistics led our research team to postulate, does financial literacy impact college students' food security status? In order to assess this question, a cross-sectional convenient sample of college students at the University of Maine completed an online survey evaluating health behaviors to assess this novel relationship. Financial literacy attitude was measured using the Jorgensen College Student Financial Literacy Scale, and food security status was measured utilizing the USDA 10-item food security survey module. Our team used independent t-tests to compare financial literacy attitude between participants demonstrating high and low food security status, and a linear regression determined whether financial literacy attitude predicted food security status. In terms of demographics, students were on average 21 years old, primarily white, female, and over half of the participants reported low food security status. The table provided on this slide has financial literacy attitude as the y-axis, which ranges from 1 to 5. On the x-axis, we have two groups, high food security status and low food security status. Independent t-tests revealed that students with high food security status demonstrated higher financial literacy attitude. These tests were very significant with a p-value of less than 0.001. Furthermore, a linear regression revealed that financial literacy attitude was a significant predictor of food security status, as the beta weight was negative 0.373 and the p-value was less than 0.001. These findings imply that college students with high financial literacy attitude have the personal inclination to stretch and budget their dollars further. This ability allows students to purchase enough food for an active, healthy lifestyle, reducing the occurrence of food insecurity. Therefore, interventions aimed at improving food security status in college students may benefit from focusing on financial literacy attitude. Strong financial literacy could provide students the ability to manage their funds in a way that promotes a healthy diet. This study was not without limitations, as there was a lack of diversity. Additionally, socioeconomic differences were not considered, or whether students were international or domestic participants. Lastly, this study was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic. Regarding future research on this topic, the socio-ecological model theory should be considered. The socio-ecological model theory considers the entire ecological system in which growth occurs when understanding and studying the process of human development. Therefore, other variables must be considered, such as parental and individual income, gender, or even nutrition literacy. Additionally, college students are quite impressionable of their peers and their environment. This impressionability should be taken into consideration when developing target interventions. Utilizing community-based participatory research, or CBPR, could benefit this population, as CBPR requires the community ed study to express their opinions on exactly what type of intervention would benefit them. Lastly, the accuracy of the USDA Food Security Survey module has been questioned for its validity in the college student population. Students who live on campus live in different environments across the span of 12 months. Therefore, these questions may not accurately capture student food security status. In final thoughts, one could conclude that education regarding financial literacy could build the foundation of health behavior change in early adulthood, resulting in reduced risk of chronic disease development, less burden on healthcare resources, and the potential to pass healthy lifestyles to future generations of leaders. That concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you so much, Amelia, for that wonderful presentation too. I actually love the graphics that really caught my attention and got me glued to the screen. Thank you very much for presenting that. Again, I'm looking at the chat to see if we have any question for you, but none for now. So I'm just going to discuss a little bit of things with you. So I saw that you mentioned the tool that was used to assess financial literacy, but I was just wondering if there's any cue to, I don't know if that tool asked them where they got their financial literacy from. Is it something from the home or from friends, or, was there something, maybe any question in that tool that kind of pointed to how they got their financial literacy? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Yes. I think you're muted. I can't hear you, Amelia. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it echoing on your end?
No, I hear you very loud and clear. Thank you.
So the entire survey consists of 3 domains, actually 4: financial knowledge, attitude, behavior, and influences, and almost some basic financial socioeconomic status questions like your individual income or your parental income. The results of this research are specifically looking at financial literacy attitude. So we don't have any questions in this research set that ask how they gained financial knowledge or how they even acquire their finances. But the whole entire survey itself asked if these participants work, and it asked them knowledge about things like their assets and whether they keep a banking account and certain questions like that kind of direct at how they acquire their financial knowledge and also how they even acquire finances. Like, do they have a job and what's their income? But not from these results, no.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And, I was just wondering, I was thinking that if those who are more financially literate maybe got that from way back when they were younger than when they got to school, I'm trying to see if any intervention would really, make a difference or something like that, because I would probably say that financial literacy can be something more into personality than something that can be learned. But, it would be great to see how the intervention really, changes their financial literacy and how that can affect their health overall. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting question. And when I was looking at the literature, I found one study, and I can't remember who it was done by, but they examined differences in socioeconomic status and how that reflected in their financial knowledge. And students who came from higher socioeconomic status, they had the ability to better recognize financial terms, but they didn't have the ability to better apply those financial concepts compared to students from lower socioeconomic statuses. So what that tells us is there's a need for financial literacy interventions for all socioeconomic statuses, but yeah, it's interesting when people learn those skills. We don't really know, and there's not necessarily home economic classes taught in primary school anymore, at least in the United States. But perhaps introducing that at even a younger level, like a home economic status class, and then continuing it through college could potentially improve the financial literacy of college students, which we can see would improve food security status.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for those insights. I really enjoyed watching your presentation. And again, thank you for the great work you're doing. We look forward to seeing more of your work out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching today's oral research presentation session. I bet that you really want to come again tomorrow to see what we're doing in the next oral presentation session. We're going to the next session now, findings from the small MNGT group we saw earlier, and I really think this is also going to be interesting. Thank you so much for listening. I've had a wonderful time talking to you all. Stay tuned. Bye.